The auctioneer's voice cut through the dusty air of Silver Ridge like a knife through butter. And Eliza Brennan stood on that wooden platform with her chin held high, refusing to let them see her cry even though her heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. It was the spring of 1878, and the Arizona Territory was still wild enough that a woman with debts and no family could find herself in this nightmare. Her father had died 6 months ago, leaving behind a struggling ranch and more money owed to the bank than Eliza had ever imagined possible. The banker, a cruel man named Silas Harding, had given her an ultimatum when she could not pay. Marry him and he would forgive the debt, or face indentured servitude to pay it off. She had refused his proposal, unwilling to bind herself to a man who looked at her like she was property. Now here she stood, her 4-year contract being sold to the highest bidder in the town square while curious onlookers gathered like vultures. "Do I hear $50? The auctioneer called out, his belly straining against his vest as he gestured toward Eliza. "Fine young woman, strong as an ox, can cook and clean and work a ranch. 4 years of honest labor, gentlemen. Who will start the bidding?" Eliza scanned the crowd, recognizing most of the faces. There was old Mr. Patterson, who owned the general store, the Whitmore brothers, who ran cattle through the territory, and several ranch hands from neighboring properties. Then her eyes landed on a man she had seen around town but never spoken to. He stood at the back of the crowd, tall and lean with sun-darkened skin and hair the color of desert sand. He wore a dusty brown hat pulled low over his eyes, and his jaw was set in a hard line as he watched the proceedings. $50. Called out Marcus Whitmore, the older of the 2 brothers, known for working his ranch hands until they collapsed. Eliza felt her stomach drop. 4 years with the Whitmores would break her spirit completely. $50, do I hear 60? The auctioneer continued, his voice rising with practiced enthusiasm. 60, shouted another voice, and Eliza turned to see it was one of Harding's associates, a man named Dutch who ran a saloon on the edge of town. The thought of what 4 years in his employment might mean made her skin crawl. The cowboy at the back of the crowd shifted his weight, his hand moving to rest on his belt. Eliza noticed his clothes were worn but clean, his boots scuffed from hard use. He did not look like a man of means, but something in his posture suggested a quiet determination. 75. Marcus Whitmore called out, a cruel smile playing at his lips. 80, Dutch countered. The bidding continued, climbing higher and higher. Eliza felt dizzy, the sun beating down on her exposed head making her feel faint. She had not eaten much in the past few days, saving what little food she had left, and now the world seemed to tilt slightly. $125. Marcus Whitmore shouted, and the crowd murmured. It was more than most people paid for 4 years of indentured labor. The man clearly wanted to make a point, to show his wealth and power. The auctioneer opened his mouth to call for more bids when a new voice rang out, deep and steady. $500. The entire square went silent. Every head turned to look at the cowboy at the back of the crowd. He stepped forward slowly, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. As he moved into the light, Eliza could see his face more clearly. He was younger than she had first thought, perhaps 26 or 27, with green eyes that seemed to see right through to her soul. There was a quiet strength in those eyes, but also something gentle, something that made her heart skip in an entirely unexpected way. $500, he repeated, his voice carrying across the silent square. Cash money. The auctioneer's eyes widened. Sir, that is quite a sum. Do you have proof you can pay? The cowboy reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather pouch, heavy with coins. He stepped up to the platform and poured the contents onto the auctioneer's table. Gold and silver coins clattered across the wood, glinting in the sunlight. The crowd pressed closer, eager to see such wealth. That is everything I have, the cowboy said quietly. Every dollar I have saved over the last 8 years. Count it. The auctioneer's hands trembled slightly as he began to count. Eliza stared at the stranger, completely bewildered. Why would anyone pay so much? What did he want from her that was worth his entire life savings? $532, the auctioneer announced finally, his voice filled with awe. Sir, that is far more than necessary. Then the extra is for her trouble, the cowboy said, not taking his eyes off Eliza. And for new clothes and a hot meal. Sold, the auctioneer shouted, banging his gavel with enthusiasm. Sold to the gentleman for $500. The crowd erupted in conversation, everyone talking at once. Marcus Whitmore's face was purple with rage and Dutch looked furious. Silas Harding, who had been watching from the bank steps, had an expression of disbelief. The cowboy ignored them all and walked up to the platform, extending his hand to help Eliza down. She hesitated for just a moment, then placed her hand in his. His palm was calloused and warm, his grip firm but gentle. As her feet touched the ground, her knees buckled slightly from relief and exhaustion. He steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "Thank you," she whispered, not knowing what else to say. "Can you walk?" he asked quietly, concern evident in his voice. "I think so. I have not eaten much lately." Without a word, he guided her away from the platform, through the murmuring crowd and toward the hotel restaurant across the square. People stared and whispered as they passed, but the cowboy kept his hand gently but firmly on her elbow, as if daring anyone to say something within earshot. Inside the restaurant, he pulled out a chair for her at a corner table, away from the windows and prying eyes. When the server came over, he ordered a full meal for her: steak, potatoes, beans, bread, and coffee. "My name is James Corbin," he said once they were alone, removing his hat and setting it on the table. His hair was slightly wavy, pushed back from his forehead. "Most people call me Colt on account of I am good with horses." "Eliza Brennan," she replied, studying his face. Up close, she could see a small scar above his left eyebrow and laugh lines around his eyes. "Why did you do that? Pay so much for my contract?" Colt leaned back in his chair, his green eyes meeting hers directly. "Because what was happening out there was not right, and I had the means to stop it." "I have seen you around town, Miss Brennan. I know you have been trying to save your father's ranch. I know Harding set you up to fail so he could either force you to marry him or see you broken. I could not stand by and watch that happen." Eliza felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. "You spent everything you have, 8 years of savings. That money could have bought you your own land, started your own ranch." "Money comes and goes," Colt said simply. "But some things cannot be bought back once they are lost. Your freedom, your dignity, those are worth more than any amount of gold." The food arrived, and Eliza realized just how hungry she truly was. She tried to eat slowly to maintain some semblance of dignity, but Colt just smiled slightly and looked away, giving her privacy. When she had finished most of the meal, feeling strength returning to her limbs, she set down her fork and looked at him seriously. "What happens now? What do you expect from me? 4 years is a long time." Colt reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He set it on the table between them and slid it toward her. "This is your contract. I bought it fair and square. It is yours now." Eliza unfolded the paper with trembling hands. It was indeed the contract, signed by the auctioneer and witnessed by the town clerk. Her name, the terms, and at the bottom, Colt's signature and payment. She looked up at him, confused. "I do not understand." "You are free, Miss Brennan," Colt said quietly. "I bought your contract and now I am releasing you from it. You do not owe me 4 years or 4 days or 4 minutes. You are free to go wherever you want, do whatever you want. The extra money I paid should be enough to get you started somewhere new if you want to leave this town behind." Eliza stared at him, speechless. She had been prepared for demands, for conditions, for expectations. She had been steeling herself for whatever the next 4 years might bring. The idea that this stranger had just handed her back her freedom without asking for anything in return was incomprehensible. "I do not know what to say," she managed finally. "You do not have to say anything," Colt replied, standing up. "I have a room at the boarding house paid up for another 3 nights. You should take it. I will bunk with some friends. Get some rest, get your strength back, and then decide what you want to do with your life." He placed some money on the table for the meal, picked up his hat, and turned to leave. Eliza found herself standing suddenly, reaching out to catch his arm. "Wait," she said urgently. "I cannot just let you walk away. You have given me everything and asked for nothing. At least let me thank you properly. Let me understand why you would do this for a complete stranger." Colt turned back to her, and for the first time, she saw something vulnerable in his expression. "You are not exactly a stranger, Miss Brennan. I have been in Silver Ridge for 2 years now, working on the Double R Ranch. I have seen you in town, watched you fight to keep your father's dream alive after he passed. I have seen you stand up to Harding when other men would have buckled. I watched you refuse to compromise yourself even when it meant losing everything. That kind of strength, that kind of integrity, it is rare out here. I just wanted to help if I could." Eliza felt warmth spreading through her chest, a feeling she had not experienced in a very long time. "You have been watching me," a slight flush crept up Colt's neck. "That sounds worse than I meant it. I just mean I have noticed you. It is hard not to notice someone like you." "Someone like me?" Eliza asked, taking a small step closer. "Someone brave," Colt said softly. "Someone who does not give up even when the whole world is against them. Someone with fire in their eyes and steel in their spine." They stood there for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Eliza realized she did not want him to leave. The thought of being alone in that boarding house room, of him disappearing back to the Double R Ranch, filled her with an unexpected ache. "Will you sit back down?" she asked. "Please? I would like to talk more if you have time." Colt's face broke into a genuine smile, transforming his serious features into something warm and open. "I have all the time in the world, Miss Brennan." They sat back down, and for the next several hours they talked. Colt told her about growing up in Texas, losing his parents to fever when he was 16, and making his way west working various ranches. He talked about his love for horses, how he could gentle even the wildest Mustang with patience and kindness. He spoke of his dream to one day own a small spread of his own, nothing fancy, just enough land for horses and a simple life. Eliza found herself opening up in ways she had not expected. She told him about her father, a good man who had been too trusting and too generous with credit. She talked about the ranch, small but beautiful, nestled in a valley with a creek running through it. She spoke of her childhood, learning to ride and rope alongside her father, and the dreams she had of making the ranch successful. Then came the darker times, her father's illness, the mounting debts, and Harding's increasingly aggressive attempts to force her into marriage. "I will not lie," Eliza said, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. "I thought about accepting his proposal. At least then the ranch would be saved, and I would have a roof over my head. But the thought of being married to that man, of letting him touch me, of spending my life as his property, I could not do it. I would rather have faced servitude than that." "You made the right choice," Colt said firmly. "A bad marriage is its own kind of prison, and at least with servitude there is an end date." "Now I have no end date," Eliza said, but she was smiling. "I have freedom I never thought I would have again, thanks to you. So what will you do with it?" Colt asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. Eliza was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I honestly do not know. The ranch is lost, I have no family, and my reputation in this town is likely ruined after today. I suppose I could go to California, maybe find work in one of the cities. Or head north to Colorado. I have heard there are opportunities there for people willing to work hard." "Those are all good options," Colt said, but something in his voice sounded disappointed. "What would you do?" Eliza asked. "If you were in my position." Colt met her eyes, and she saw courage gathering in his expression. "If I were you, I would stay. I would fight to get back what was stolen. The ranch is not lost yet, is it? Harding still owns the debt, but the property does not revert to him unless it is sold at auction. That has not happened yet." "It is scheduled for next month," Eliza said, "but I have no money to pay the debt. Even with the extra you gave me, it is not enough. My father owed nearly $3,000. Colt whistled low. That is a substantial sum. How did it get so high? Interest, Eliza said bitterly. Harding kept extending the loans, adding fees and interest. What started as $800 5 years ago has grown into this monster I cannot possibly defeat. Maybe not alone, Colt said carefully. But what if you had help? Eliza looked at him sharply. I cannot ask you for more money. You have already given me everything. I am not talking about money, Colt said. I am talking about work. The Double R is looking to downsize their crew. The owner's son is taking over and he wants to bring in his own people. I will be out of a job in 2 weeks. But I am good with horses, Miss Brennan. Very good. If your ranch has the facilities, we could start a horse breaking and training business. The Army is always looking for good mounts and civilians pay well for properly trained horses. With your land and my skills, we could make enough to start paying down that debt. Eliza's heart began to race. You would do that? Come work on my ranch, help me save it. I would, Colt said, but I want to be clear about something. This would be a business partnership, equal partners. I am not doing this to put you in my debt or to hold anything over you. If we do this, we do it as equals, and you are free to leave or end the partnership at any time. I will put it in writing if that makes you more comfortable. Eliza felt tears welling up again, but this time she let them fall. Why are you being so kind to me? I do not understand what I have done to deserve this. Colt reached across the table and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. The gesture was so tender, so unexpected that Eliza caught her breath. You do not have to do anything to deserve kindness, Miss Brennan, he said softly. You just have to exist, and for what it is worth, I think you deserve a whole lot more than what this world has given you so far. That night, Eliza did sleep in the boarding house room Colt had arranged. He, true to his word, went to stay with friends who worked at the livery stable. As she lay in the soft bed, cleaner and more comfortable than she had been in months, Eliza stared at the ceiling and tried to process everything that had happened. This morning she had woken up facing 4 years of servitude, her freedom stripped away, her future bleak. Now she had her freedom back, a potential path to saving her ranch and a partnership with a man who seemed too good to be true. She thought about Colt's green eyes, the gentle strength in his hands, the quiet determination in his voice. She thought about the way he had looked at her, like she was someone worth saving, someone worth believing in. Eliza had been so focused on survival for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to be seen as a person, as a woman, as someone with value beyond her ability to work or produce or obey. The next morning, Eliza woke early and went to the general store. With some of the extra money Colt had left her, she bought practical clothing, sturdy pants, work shirts, a good pair of boots, and a wide-brimmed hat to keep the sun off her face. She also purchased supplies they would need for the ranch: nails, rope, feed, and other essentials. By the time she was finished, she felt more like herself than she had in months. Colt met her at noon as they had arranged. He had a wagon borrowed from his friends at the livery, loaded with his personal belongings and some tools. Together, they rode out to her ranch, 7 miles outside of town. As they crested the final hill and the ranch came into view, Eliza felt her chest tighten with emotion. The main house was small but solid, built by her father with his own hands. The barn was larger, designed to house horses and equipment. There were several corrals, currently empty, and fields that rolled down to the creek. Everything was overgrown and neglected from months of her being unable to keep up, but the bones of something beautiful were still there. "It is perfect," Colt said, and he sounded like he meant it. They spent the rest of that day and the next several weeks working from sunrise to sunset. Colt repaired fences and gates while Eliza worked on the house and barn, patching roof leaks and reinforcing weak boards. They cleared brush, mended corrals, and slowly brought the ranch back to life. Colt proved to be as skilled as he had claimed. Within the first week, he had gentled a wild horse he bought cheap from a passing trader, and within 2 weeks, he had that horse responding to commands like it had been trained since birth. As they worked side by side day after day, Eliza found herself growing increasingly drawn to Colt. It was not just his looks, though she could not deny he was handsome in a rough, weathered way. It was the way he moved through the world with quiet confidence, the way he treated her with respect and equality, never talking down to her or dismissing her ideas. It was the way he smiled when he thought she was not looking, and the way he always made sure she ate enough and did not work herself to exhaustion. One evening, about a month after they had started working together, they sat on the porch of the main house watching the sun set over the hills. They were both tired and dusty from a long day of work, but there was satisfaction in their exhaustion. The ranch was beginning to look like a working property again. "We need to talk about finances," Eliza said, pulling out a small ledger she had been keeping. "We have sold 3 horses so far, which brought in $240. The Army contract you secured will bring in another $500 over the next 2 months. After expenses, we will have about $600 to put toward the debt." "That is a good start," Colt said. "If we can keep this pace, we should be able to pay off a significant portion within a year." "But Harding is not going to wait a year," Eliza said, frustration creeping into her voice. "The auction is in 2 weeks. If I cannot pay the full amount, he will take the ranch." Colt was quiet for a moment, his jaw working. "Then we go talk to him. Show him what we have built here, prove that we have a viable business. Maybe we can negotiate new terms." "Harding does not negotiate," Eliza said bitterly. "He takes what he wants." "Then we will have to make him see reason," Colt said firmly. He turned to look at her, his green eyes intense in the fading light. "I am not going to let him take this ranch, Eliza, not after everything we have worked for, not after seeing what this place means to you." Eliza felt her breath catch. It was the first time he had called her by her first name, and hearing it in his voice sent warmth flooding through her. "You have already done so much. I cannot ask you to fight my battles." "You are not asking," Colt said, reaching over to take her hand. "I am offering. We are partners, remember? Your fights are my fights now." Eliza looked down at their joined hands, his rough and strong, hers smaller but no less calloused from hard work. She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his, and felt him squeeze gently. "Colt," she said softly, "I need to tell you something. These past few weeks, working with you, building something here together, it has been the happiest I have been in years. Maybe ever. And it is not just because of the ranch, it is because of you. The way you make me laugh, the way you believe in me, the way you look at me like I am something precious. I do not want to complicate our partnership, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel this way." Colt shifted closer on the porch steps, using his free hand to cup her face gently. "Eliza, I have been half in love with you since the first time I saw you in town, standing up to Harding outside the bank. I have been completely in love with you since the day we came out here, and you rolled up your sleeves and outworked me repairing that barn. I did not say anything because I did not want you to think that was why I helped you, that I expected something in return. But if you are telling me you feel the same way, then I am not going to waste another minute pretending I do not want to kiss you." "Then do not waste another minute," Eliza whispered. Colt leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but Eliza met him halfway. When their lips touched, it was gentle at first, tentative, like they were both afraid of breaking something precious. Then Eliza sighed against his mouth and Colt pulled her closer, the kiss deepening into something more urgent, more real. She wound her arms around his neck, feeling the solid strength of him, the warmth of his body against hers. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Colt rested his forehead against hers. "I am going to marry you someday, Eliza Brennan," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "if you will have me. I know I do not have much to offer right now except hard work and a stubborn refusal to give up, but I swear I will spend every day of my life making sure you never regret taking a chance on me." "You are all I want," Eliza said, tears streaming down her face. "You are everything I never knew I needed. And yes, someday, when we have saved this ranch and built our life, I will marry you, James Corbin." I will marry you and spend the rest of my life thanking whatever force of nature brought you to that town square when I needed you most." They sat there on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms as the stars began to appear overhead. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Eliza felt completely at peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them together. The meeting with Harding did not go as they had hoped. The banker sat behind his massive desk, his face twisted into a cruel smile as Colt laid out their business plan and their offer to begin making substantial payments on the debt. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, Mr. Corbin," Harding said, his voice dripping with false courtesy. "But the terms of the loan are quite clear. Full payment is due or the property goes to auction. I see no reason to renegotiate." "The reason is that we have a viable business that can pay you back with interest," Colt said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Foreclosing helps no one. You will get your money and we keep the ranch. Everyone wins." "Except I do not want to wait for my money," Harding said, leaning back in his chair. "And I have other plans for that property. Several investors are interested in purchasing it for development. I stand to make far more selling it outright than waiting years for you to pay back the debt in installments." "This is not about the money," Eliza said, her voice shaking with rage. "This is about punishing me for rejecting you. This is about your pride." Harding's smile turned vicious. "Careful, Miss Brennan. You are in no position to make accusations. The law is on my side. The auction will proceed as scheduled. I suggest you make peace with losing your father's ranch. Perhaps if you had been more reasonable when I made you a generous offer of marriage, things would be different. But you made your choice and now you must live with the consequences." Colt stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "We will see about that. Come on, Eliza." Outside the bank, Eliza felt despair threatening to overwhelm her. "It is over. He is going to take everything and there is nothing we can do about it." "There is always something we can do," Colt said grimly. "We just have to figure out what. Let me think." Over the next few days, Colt disappeared into town for long stretches, coming back late at night. Eliza wanted to ask what he was doing, but she trusted him and focused on her own work, training horses and preparing for what might be their last days on the ranch. 3 days before the scheduled auction, Colt came riding up to the ranch with another man beside him. He was older, maybe in his mid-50s, with gray hair and a weathered face. He wore a suit that marked him as someone of importance, and he carried himself with quiet authority. "Eliza, this is Judge William Thornton," Colt said, dismounting quickly. "He is the circuit judge for this territory." "Judge, this is Eliza Brennan." The judge tipped his hat. "Miss Brennan, a pleasure. Mr. Corbin has told me quite a bit about your situation. I would like to see the paperwork on your father's loans, if I may." Eliza hurried to get all the documents, her hands shaking with hope she was afraid to feel. The judge spent over an hour reviewing everything, making notes and asking questions. Finally, he sat back and removed his spectacles. "Mr. Harding has been a busy man," the judge said, his voice grave. "Too busy, perhaps. Miss Brennan, are you aware that several of these interest charges and fees are not legal under territorial law, and that Mr. Harding has falsified dates on some of these documents to make it appear the loans are older than they actually are?" Eliza felt her heart leap. "What does that mean?" "It means your actual debt is considerably less than what Mr. Harding claims," the judge said. "By my calculation, removing all illegal charges and correcting the dates, you owe approximately $1,200, not $3,000. And since Mr. Harding engaged in fraudulent practices, I am within my rights to impose penalties. I can give you an additional year to pay, with interest frozen at the original rate." Eliza could hardly believe what she was hearing. "We can pay $1,200. It will take us a few months, but we can do it." "I thought you might say that," the judge said, smiling. "I will issue an order stopping the auction and revising the debt. Mr. Harding will not be pleased, but he will comply with the law or face criminal charges for fraud." After the judge left, Eliza threw her arms around Colt, laughing and crying at the same time. "How did you do this? How did you find him?" "I remembered hearing that Judge Thornton was known for being fair and for not tolerating corruption," Colt explained. "I rode to his residence in Prescott, 3 days' hard ride from here, and convinced him to come review your case. It cost me a favor I will have to repay someday, but it was worth it." "You rode 3 days each way in less than a week?" Eliza asked, amazed. "No wonder you have been exhausted." "I would have ridden for a month if it meant saving this place for you," Colt said simply. Eliza pulled him down for a deep kiss, pouring all her gratitude and love into it. When they broke apart, she rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I love you, Colt. I love you so much it scares me." "I love you too," he murmured into her hair. "More than I thought it was possible to love anyone." The confrontation with Harding the next day was satisfying in a way Eliza had not expected. The banker's face turned purple when Judge Thornton presented the revised debt calculation and the order stopping the auction. He sputtered and raged, but the judge was unmoved. "You are fortunate I am only revising the debt and not bringing criminal charges, Mr. Harding," the judge said coldly. "Fraud is a serious crime, and I have documented evidence of your illegal practices. I suggest you accept this outcome gracefully and consider it a lesson learned." Harding turned his fury on Eliza and Colt. "You think you have won? You have made an enemy today. I have influence in this territory, and I will see that you regret crossing me. Threaten them again, and I will reconsider my decision about criminal charges," the judge said. "Are we clear, Mr. Harding?" The banker stalked out of his own office, slamming the door behind him. The judge shook his head. "Men like that rarely learn. Be careful, both of you. He may try something outside the law." His warning proved prophetic. 2 weeks later, on a moonless night, Eliza woke to the smell of smoke. She bolted out of bed and ran outside to see flames licking at the barn. Colt was already there with buckets, and together they fought desperately to save the structure and the 3 horses inside. They managed to get the animals out and contain the fire before it spread to the main house, but the barn was heavily damaged. As the sun rose, revealing the full extent of the destruction, they found evidence that the fire had been deliberately set. Boot prints leading to and from the barn, and a can that had contained kerosene. "Harding," Eliza said, her voice flat with certainty. "Probably," Colt agreed. "But we cannot prove it, and even if we could, he would have hired someone else to do his dirty work." "What do we do?" Eliza asked, suddenly exhausted. Colt put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her against his side. "We rebuild. We do not let him win. We have enough saved to repair the barn and buy more horses. It will set us back a few months, but we will recover. We always do." And they did. The community, which had watched the judge's actions with interest and had quietly turned against Harding, came together to help. Neighbors they barely knew showed up with lumber and tools. The old hands from the Double R Ranch, who had been let go and respected Colt, came to help rebuild. Within a month, the barn was repaired and better than before, and they had acquired 5 new horses to train. The attempted intimidation seemed to have the opposite effect that Harding intended. Instead of breaking them, it strengthened their resolve and brought the community to their side. Business picked up as people made a point of buying horses from them rather than from Harding's associates. The Army contract was extended, and they began to build a reputation for quality work. 6 months after the auction that never happened, Eliza and Colt sat down with their ledgers and realized they had done it. They had earned enough not only to make the required payments on the debt, but to pay it off completely. "We should wait," Colt said. "Keep some as reserve in case something else happens." "No," Eliza said firmly. "I want this debt gone. I want to walk into that bank, pay every last cent, and watch Harding's face when he has to hand over the deed free and clear. I want to be done with him forever." Colt grinned. "When you put it that way, I cannot argue." The next day, they walked into the bank together, carrying a heavy bag of money. Harding's face indeed went through a range of emotions when Eliza counted out $1,250 onto his desk, covering the debt and the interest that had accrued during the payment period. "I believe this concludes our business, Mr. Harding," Eliza said with icy politeness. "I will take the deed and a receipt showing the debt is paid in full." Harding had no choice but to comply. As they walked out of the bank, Eliza holding the deed to her ranch, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she had been carrying for years. "It is really over," she said wonderingly. "The ranch is truly ours." "Ours," Colt repeated, liking the sound of that. "Speaking of which, I think it is time we made that official." He dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the street in front of the bank, with curious onlookers beginning to gather. From his pocket, he pulled out a simple gold band. "Eliza Brennan, you are the strongest, bravest, most stubborn woman I have ever met, and I love you with everything I am. I know I already said I would marry you someday, but I do not want to wait for someday anymore. Will you marry me? Today, tomorrow, whenever you are ready. Will you be my wife and my partner for the rest of our lives?" Eliza pulled him to his feet and kissed him soundly, not caring who was watching. "Yes," she said when she finally pulled back. "Yes, I will marry you. How about next month? That will give us time to plan something simple but nice." "Next month is perfect," Colt said, sliding the ring onto her finger. They were married on a beautiful October morning in 1878 in a small church in Silver Ridge. The ceremony was simple, with just close friends and neighbors in attendance, but it was perfect. Eliza wore a dress of deep blue silk that brought out her eyes, and Colt wore his best suit, his hair neatly trimmed for the occasion. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife and Colt kissed her, Eliza felt a happiness so complete it brought tears to her eyes. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food contributed by everyone who came. There was music and dancing, and as the sun set and lanterns were lit, Colt pulled Eliza into a waltz under the stars. "Happy?" he asked, holding her close. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Eliza replied. "A year ago I thought my life was over. Now I have everything I could ever want." "We have everything," Colt corrected gently, "and we are just getting started." Over the next few years, they built their horse ranch into one of the most successful in the territory. Their reputation for quality training and fair dealing spread, and they had more business than they could handle. They hired several hands to help with the work, providing good jobs and fair wages. The ranch that had nearly been lost to debt became prosperous beyond Eliza's wildest dreams, but the greatest joy came not from business success, but from the family they built together. In the spring of 1880, Eliza gave birth to their first child, a healthy baby boy they named Thomas, after her father. Colt was so overcome with emotion when he held his son for the first time that he wept openly, pressing kisses to the baby's tiny head and then to Eliza's lips. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for this gift for our son, for the life we have built." "Thank us both," Eliza said, exhausted but radiant. "We built this together, every bit of it." 2 years later, their daughter arrived, a fierce little thing they named Rose for Colt's mother. She had her father's green eyes and her mother's determination. And from the moment she could walk, she followed Colt around the ranch, wanting to help with the horses. As their children grew, Eliza and Colt made sure to tell them the story of how they came to be a family. They did not hide the difficult parts, the auction, the debt, the struggles. They wanted their children to understand that strength was not about never facing hardship, but about how you responded to it. They wanted them to know that sometimes love meant sacrifice, and that true partnership meant facing challenges together. On a warm evening in 1885, 7 years after that fateful day in the town square, Eliza and Colt sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. Thomas was teaching little Rose how to braid rope, his patience with his sister a mirror of the patience his father had always shown. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Eliza asked, leaning her head on Colt's shoulder. "If you had not been there that day, if you had not bid everything you had." I think about it sometimes, Colt admitted. But then I look at this, at you and our children and the life we have built, and I know I would do it again in a heartbeat. Every dollar, every sacrifice, every moment of uncertainty was worth it to end up here. I used to think I needed to save the ranch because it was my father's legacy, Eliza said thoughtfully. But now I realize it is our legacy, yours and mine and our children's. We took something that was broken and made it whole. We took something that was dying and brought it back to life, just like you did for me. Colt kissed the top of her head. We saved each other, I think. You gave me something to fight for, something to believe in. Before you, I was just drifting from job to job, never putting down roots. You gave me a home, a purpose, a family. You gave me everything that matters. As the sun set over the hills they had worked so hard to keep, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Eliza felt profound gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. The auction that could have destroyed her had instead brought her the greatest love she had ever known. The cowboy who had bid everything he had given her not just freedom but a future beyond anything she could have imagined. In the years that followed, the Corbin Ranch continued to thrive. They expanded their operations, adding cattle to their horse training business. They became pillars of the community, known for their generosity and fairness. When hard times hit other ranchers, Eliza and Colt were the first to offer help, remembering what it felt like to face ruin. Silas Harding eventually left Silver Ridge in disgrace after Judge Thornton finally brought charges against him for other fraudulent dealings. The bank was taken over by honest management, and the town flourished without his corrupt influence. Eliza and Colt had 2 more children, another boy and another girl, filling their home with laughter and love. Each child grew up learning the value of hard work, integrity, and the importance of fighting for what mattered. They heard the story of the auction so many times that it became part of family legend, the tale of how their father had saved their mother, and how together they had built something beautiful from the ashes of loss. On their 20th wedding anniversary, in 1898, Colt had a surprise for Eliza. He took her into town to the jeweler and presented her with a necklace, a delicate gold chain with a pendant shaped like a Mustang in mid-run. "This is to commemorate the horses that gave us our start," he explained as he fastened it around her neck. "But also to remind you that you were always wild and free, even on that platform in the town square. I did not give you freedom that day, Eliza. You never lost it. I just removed some obstacles so you could run." Eliza looked at herself in the jeweler's mirror, touching the pendant with gentle fingers. At 42 years old, she saw a woman who had survived and thrived, who had faced down injustice and built a legacy. But more than that, she saw a woman who was deeply loved and who loved deeply in return. "You gave me more than freedom," she said, turning to face her husband. "You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me partnership when the world wanted to see me as property. You gave me love without conditions or expectations. You gave me everything." Colt pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her in an embrace that felt like coming home, the same feeling she had experienced every day for 20 years. "And you gave me purpose and family and a reason to believe in tomorrow. We gave each other everything, and I would not change a single moment of this journey." As they left the jeweler's shop and walked through the streets of Silver Ridge, hand in hand like newlyweds, despite 2 decades of marriage, Eliza thought about the girl she had been on that awful day in 1878. That girl could never have imagined this future, this happiness, this sense of belonging and peace. The town square was ahead, and without discussing it, they both walked toward it. The platform where the auction had taken place was long gone, replaced by a fountain and benches. They sat together, watching people go about their business, children playing, couples strolling, life flowing around them. "Do you think people remember?" Eliza asked quietly. "What happened here?" "Some do," Colt said, "but I do not think it matters what they remember. What matters is what we built from it. What matters is that we took the worst day of your life and turned it into the beginning of our greatest adventure." Eliza squeezed his hand. The beginning of our love story. Exactly, Colt agreed. And it is a story I would not trade for anything in this world. They sat there as the sun began to set, bathed in golden light, two people who had found each other in the darkest of circumstances and created something beautiful. The auction that was meant to break Eliza had instead forged a bond that would last a lifetime. The cowboy who bid everything he had received far more than he ever gave. And together, they proved that sometimes the greatest love stories begin in the most unexpected ways, that freedom is not just about legal documents and contracts, but about finding someone who sees your worth and believes in your strength. As they finally stood to walk home to their ranch, to their children and the life they had built together, Eliza looked back one last time at the square. She sent a silent thank you to whatever twist of fate had brought Colt to that place on that day. Then she turned toward the future, toward the ranch she loved and the man she loved more, and she walked forward with her head held high and her hand clasped firmly in his, ready for whatever adventures still lay ahead. Their story became legend in Silver Ridge, the tale of the woman who was auctioned off and the cowboy who set her free. But those who knew them well understood that the real story was not about rescue or salvation. It was about two people who found each other at exactly the right moment, who chose partnership over pride, who built something lasting through hard work and unwavering devotion. It was about love that was freely given and freely returned, about freedom that was shared rather than granted, and about a life built together that was richer than anything either could have achieved alone. And when they were old, sitting on that same porch with grandchildren playing at their feet, Colt would still look at Eliza with the same wonder and love he had felt the first time he saw her standing tall on that auction platform. And Eliza would still feel her heart skip when he smiled at her, still grateful for the man who had seen her worth when the world wanted to see her as commodity, still in love with the cowboy who bid everything and gained the world. Their love story was not about grand gestures or fairy tale magic. It was about showing up every day, about choosing each other through good times and bad, about building something beautiful brick by brick, moment by moment, choice by choice. It was about an auction that should have been an ending but became a beginning, about a bid that looked like charity but was actually the bravest act of love, and about two souls who found in each other exactly what they needed to become who they were meant to be. And they lived that love every single day for the rest of their long, happy lives, never taking for granted the miracle that had brought them together, always grateful for the journey that had started in a dusty town square and led them home to each other.